Got us over the hump, so never know. It passed by less than 100 votes, so everything passed out.
Okay, at this time, we will call to order the meeting of Little Miami Local Schools. Roll call, please.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Jernay?
Yes.
Mr. Cremines?
Yes.
Ms. Grice?
Here.
Mr. Seaver?
Here. Okay, if you all could stand. We're going to have a presentation. Just stand there. Second pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. We're all still trying to get used to where we're sitting and what we're doing here. At this time, we need a motion to adopt the agenda that you have in front of you. I'll move. Mr. Cremines?
Second.
Ms. Jernay? Roll call, please.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Jernay?
Yes.
Mr. Cremines?
Yes.
Ms. Grice?
Yes.
Mr. Seaver?
Yes.
Okay, this time we need a motion to accept the reading of the minutes for the January 8th organizational meeting. Ms. Grice?
Second.
And Mr. Seaver? All right, roll call, please.
Ms. Jernay?
Yes.
Mr. Cremines?
Yes.
Ms. Grice?
Yes.
Mr. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes. Okay, at this time, informational presentations, communications, and/or visitors to the board. Mr. Power.
Thank you. January is Board Appreciation Month, Board Member Appreciation Month, and tonight we'd just like to give a little certificate of recognition to our 5 board members who really have a thankless job. Put a lot of time, effort in, and so we'd like to present you with a little certificate of appreciation. Thank you for your efforts to support our kids and our staff in their everyday efforts
Thank you very much, Mr.
with our kids. Trying to mess with everything.
Sure.
And we're sitting in a new place tonight. It's been a long journey to find a home for our board and for the leadership staff of the district. And I'd just like to take a couple of minutes here and thank our board for this wonderful facility. You've supported us, and you've been able to bring the leadership staff together in one place. And while several of us offices still have to move in down here, a lot of us are here, and it's just great. It's a great facility. It's made us a little more efficient. Don't have to go to different buildings. We can walk around the corner and all have a conversation as opposed to going to another building to get eyes on another person. So my personal thanks for all that you've done to make this happen. This is a first-class facility from my perspective. I've been in a lot of different board offices in the area, and this board office is second to none. So I'd just like to thank you, and our administrative staff would like to thank you as well. Next, I think Mr. Bailey has a young lady here that he'd like to introduce, and she'd just like to take a few minutes to talk to the board.
Absolutely. Let me give you a little context before I introduce my special friend here. Outstanding representative of the high school. I can't wait for her to share a little bit with you, just so you understand why my friend Jamie's here tonight. Every month, every student in Little Miami, we focus on a very specific character value every month. So just consider how massive that is. Once a month, every student in Little Miami is tackling a very specific character value. So we've done things in the past like wisdom. So for example, in August, the character value was to consider wisdom. And sometimes we do really funny, silly things, like our very own Tammy Martin dressed up like the Chick-fil-A cow and was walking around the high school. We had this wisdom contest, and we partnered with Chick-fil-A, and they brought a platter full of nuggets, and we did this really fun Nuggets of Wisdom challenge. Sometimes we do very serious values, like this month is self-control. So we have a handful, very small handful, of high school students that are giving up their cell phone for the entire day and exhibiting some self-control to stay off of their phone. So we do all sorts of fun stuff. February, coming up, is service. And so we were wanting to do something kind of big and massive and something that could bring all the schools in the district while we all focus on the same character value. Each building kind of does their own thing. February, we're all coming together because of Jamie. So Jamie's going to share kind of her big idea. She started her own nonprofit organization that is all about service. And without further ado, Little Miami High School junior Jamie Blodgett.
Thank you. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jamie, and I am 17 years old, and I'm a junior at Little Miami High School. So I'm here to talk to you today about Military Angels, which is a nonprofit organization that I am starting. And kind of the backstory behind this is I come from a huge, long military family, and so military was definitely a part of my life. I learned military time, the military alphabet, all sorts of stuff like that. And for the longest time, I wanted to go into the Navy. Now, that was a pretty prominent thing for after high school. After senior year, I wanted to go into the Navy. But my freshman year, I found out that I had juvenile patella syndrome and Osgood-Schlatter's in my left knee, and I wouldn't be able to go to basic training. And that was heartbreaking for me. So I decided I wanted to give back to the people who are overseas doing God knows what, so that I can go to school and have an education and have a roof over my head, which is something I definitely do not take for granted. So the Military Angels, kind of the slogan, I guess you could say, is to give back to the people who are willing to give up everything just so that we can have something, whether that be a healthy family, roof over our head, etc. So basically, the goal here on the packets, the top page is the symbol, and I have to give credit where credit is due. Sarah Clayton, who's a sophomore at Little Miami High School, drew that symbol, which was super sweet of her. So she did that. And then on the following pages are the things. I met with a group of Marines, and that is like the updated list of things that they're requesting for soldiers overseas. And they will basically collect all the stuff, pay for shipping, get it to where it needs to go, to help people who are overseas. So that's kind of my spiel. Any questions?
So who do we give it to, like, if we bring something in, who do we bring it to?
Where the collection?
Yeah.
So we were still.
I'll hop in and help you just a
Okay.
little. So just so you guys know, we are each building, so we're taking that list of all the different things that our soldiers are hoping to get that would be helpful for them. So each building in the district is taking like a chunk of those items. We're kind of scaling the list down. So you could end up, like, once we have that list finalized and publicized out who's got what, the district counselors have all kind of worked that out of who's going to get what. And so if there is a specific thing that when you look at that list, like you're dying to like bring teddy bears or toothpaste or whatever it is that you're done, maybe you have connections to somebody that can get some of this stuff at bulk, or somebody, you find somebody that's willing to donate large amounts of it, we'll let you know which building to get it to. And then Jamie's working with the Marines, and we'll come around and we'll get all that stuff and we'll get it to the Marines that are stationed.
Is this just for the month of February?
It is just for the month of February.
Okay.
And again, our big district value for February is service. So it's kind of hitting on both ends there. The military service on one hand, but also the service to others is the character value that we're trying to instill in our kiddos.
All right, so like.
And you can ask Jamie too. She's.
It's like shampoo. Do you want the big bottles, or, do you want those little sample things, or do you?
If you bring in big bottles, they will put them in individuals for you. If you bring in child size, that's also okay.
Okay,
Yeah, so either or, it's fine.
all right.
Very nice.
That's
Some of the
really-
buildings are having little like contests between themselves, like building versus building. Some buildings like us at the high school will do different, whether it be like advisory or grade levels. We'll try to make it fun, do some stuff. And we'll keep you guys updated on what's going on.
So each building then will be given a specific list, and then they will, and then among the class classrooms, or however the administration of that building decides to do it, then they will collect at the end of the month and.
We'll collect the entire month, and then it's kind of over the end of the month.
Okay.
And then we'll work with the Marines to get it all collected up. We'll count, get numbers, get some good pictures, and
This is
have
really
some
nice.
fun.
Yeah,
It's
that's
great.
I think this is great, very nice.
Excellent, excellent.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah,
Thank you very much. Yeah.
And we have another update related to our new buildings. Our board rep here has conducted a survey with high school students, and she'd like to share the results of that survey around our new spaces and what students at the high school want to see in some of our new spaces.
Right.
Okay, so to begin, I want to say thank you to Mr. Nathan and Mr. Bailey because they kind of helped me with this. The last few weeks I've been talking to Mr. Nathan about ways we could get high school students involved in saying things that they feel that they would want in a new school or a updated school. And then Mr. Bailey helped by putting it on Schoology so anybody could have access to take the quiz and say what they felt we needed. The survey included 9 questions and it was anonymous, so it encouraged students to be honest with what they really felt they needed. So here's the breakdown of who answered the survey by grade level. I found it pretty interesting that the majority were sophomores and freshmen, just because freshmen have been to school for almost a year now, and sophomores have been there almost 2. So they've kind of seen what the high school has to offer, and then some of the freshmen might even be here for when some changes could occur. These were the main things students wanted to see in a school. The
biggest one was more spaces to eat lunch, whether that be more rooms inside the building, or maybe some months we have access to eat outside, depending on, maybe it's like a reward for good grades or something like that. Also, maybe more outdoor learning spaces. We have a couple courtyards that we don't really use right now, so maybe that's something we could think about. Another big thing was smaller class sizes. Personally, I agree with this one just because I take a lot of science classes, and I know that in my lab group, sometimes we have 6 people, and if you're trying to do a hands-on lab with 6 people, it can be hard to actually participate in that lab. And then more parking availability, and right now you can't like just put in a parking lot, so some things that people thought about is maybe like an upperclassman privilege where seniors get first priority and then kind of trickles down, or having spots numbered,
They don't do that now? Or they do?
have numbered spots.
Yep.
Yeah, we have festival spot, we have festival.
Yeah, so it's first come, first served.
Used to be numbered, but
Seriously?
I'm getting to school early.
they have
Gotta be real early.
capacity, but there are tons of science spots.
We even have spots right now. Bit fun.
Another question we asked was where do you learn best? And you were given options of a traditional classroom, a non-traditional classroom, or you had no preference. So I thought it was interesting that 50% of people said they had no preference on where they learned. 27% of people said the non-traditional space, and 23% said a traditional classroom. And part of this may be that we don't really have many non-traditional spaces, so they don't really know what that means. But I also found it was interesting that half said they didn't really care where they learned. One of the other questions was there was a scale given from 1 to 5 of how much do you feel we use technology currently in the school. Although most said the perfect amount of technology, that was like almost 42%, the data was still pretty skewed to the right as far as a lot of people feel we use technology in an overwhelming amount, and that just really stuck out to me. There was a space where you could type in new technology suggestions. The biggest suggestion was actually like almost 60% of people said they wanted microwave access in the cafeteria. So if they pack their lunch, they can put something in the microwave. There was also a lot of people that wanted, when I say laptop accessories, meaning more charging stations at the school, or chargers like available at the school where they don't have to bring their own charger from their home to the building. Student access to a printer, which I really liked because we take our laptops home in the evenings, but we don't have to hook up to print from our computer to our own printers. And then we come to school and we don't necessarily have a printer we can print from there either. Another thing was an elevator at the other end of the building, because if you're trying to go from Mr. Light's room to Mr. Skidmore's room and you're on crutches or in a wheelchair, it's hard to get there in your time. And then a suggestion for maybe one of the flex learning spaces we talked about in another meeting was possibly a 3D printer. But there were comments made that some other schools have those and they found them very interesting to learn from. Another question was, what do you feel we should scale back on? And online textbooks were brought up. And it wasn't necessarily that we should get rid of all online textbooks, but maybe have an option of if you don't want an online textbook, you can still use a regular hardback textbook. And that's the same like in teachers' classrooms. There's some teachers that only use computers to take notes, and there's some teachers that still use pen and paper. So maybe like having some sort of consistency with what we do online and what we do with pen and paper. And online testing, a lot of students thought we should scale back on that because, there's ways to cheat online, you can group chat and stuff, but also I know in one of my classes we take notes strictly on the computer, but if you look around, kids are playing games or they're not really on their computer and doing notes. And I have one teacher that jokes around a lot that he wants to put a mirror in the whole backside of his classroom so he can see who's playing games and actually taking notes. Where do you feel more staff members are needed? 34% said in the athletic department. I agree with that because I see Mr. Pantley constantly running through the hallways, get from place to place, trying to organize things. So I think that's important. More teachers, and this kind of goes back to the class size issue and being able to have more hands-on learning if you have smaller class sizes. And counselors, strictly because our counselors are responsible for so much. They help with clubs, they help with scheduling. I'm seeing this year they do a lot with senior scholarships and helping college planning. And they also are field trips for some chaperones to the Career Center and Wilmington College. And they're also there to give support to students who need them, which kind of leads to the next slide. That 47% of people said that they wanted to see a mental health specialist available at the school. I think this would be very useful. I'm fortunate enough to when I come home from school, I have stress releases and my family's very supportive, but some people don't have that. So if they're at school all day and then have no release or have to go to a job, they don't have anybody they can talk to. So I think that would be a great thing to have. One of the last couple questions was suggestions for new classes. An overwhelming amount of people said they wanted classes that could teach them life skills, such as bringing back a home economics class or woodworking. And both girls and boys can take those classes, doesn't matter. How to balance a checkbook, how to do taxes. I thought this was interesting, how to use Excel or PowerPoint, because now we're expected to do things online, but some people don't know how to do those things online. More language courses, because right now, with a face-to-face teacher, we only offer French and Spanish. I thought sign language would be a very great one to add. And then there was also talk about German and Latin. And then more flexible relationships between AP, honors, and CP classes. The examples I could think of with that is senior year, you can pick between AP English or regular English or CP English, and there's no in between. So if you want an honors class that maybe isn't an AP or you want to challenge yourself a little differently than a CP class, there's no way to do that. Same junior year with government, there's either a CP government class or AP government, and there's no in between. Other requests that students had were fixing chairs in the auditorium, more parking availability, consistent room temperatures throughout the building, a new scoreboard in the gym, a dance team, and mock trial. My favorite suggestion, which I didn't put up here, was some students wanted a Starbucks in the school. So I like that one. And then to close with, I know at a couple other meetings, there were talks and PowerPoints about guiding principles that are being used to lead in the school process and building new schools. And one of the things that stuck out to me was meeting the needs of all students. And I feel if we take the thoughts of what the high schoolers had to say in consideration, then we'll be one step closer to meeting those needs of all students.
Thank you.
The auditorium chairs will be fixed in about 4 to 6 weeks. It's already been addressed. This is really great feedback.
It is very good feedback. Very good feedback.
And to tie in with that, I have Christy Bourne here tonight from Emerging Design, and she's going to give an update on where we are. We continue to meet to refine and review planning. We had a work session with the board on January 8th that was a rather extended work session around all the work that we've done. And this is just an update from that January 8th timeframe. We've met with staff again to review some of the elements that were presented, and this is an update on those elements for the board tonight.
I don't know if you guys want to turn around and somehow.
We were just talking about that. You have a screen back there, so you can see that, and they can see this one. Yeah, what's
Phase 2,
Why don't you guys turn around, there's nothing back there.
Right, I don't, right, okay. And, a lot of this is, so what I'm going to walk through tonight is really just an update from the much more lengthy presentation that I gave at your last board
It's
meeting.
not 90 slides.
Thank you.
I promise I cut it down. But since our last meeting, we did have a final round of programming sessions with staff and principal and administrators. And so I wanted to walk through with you some of the decisions that were made, because these will then be presented more in depth on Thursday. We are going to be presenting to the staff that are interested, and then we're also going to be presenting to the community. So we thought it was important to make sure that we walk through this with you first. So again, just as a reminder, what we're talking about here are high school additions and renovations, junior high school additions and renovations, intermediate additions and renovations, and then the new early elementary school. Okay. So in terms of the high school additions, I just want to walk through some of the changes from the last go-round. So I'm going to attempt to keep this brief. So go ahead, next slide. What we talked about last time, again, just to bring everybody in the room up to speed a little bit, I kicked off every programming session that we had with staff and asked that they be thoughtful in prioritizing wants and needs. And the reason I did that is because the current construction market is very volatile. We're seeing construction prices increase a lot over the last year. And so if we can start off programming and start off design already with some thoughts in mind as to ways that we can save dollars, that will help in the long run. And so one of those with the high school that we were talking about is actually stemmed more from how the high school administration would like to operate more than actually it did from the cost saving standpoint. In the original program, we had an additional new administration suite located by the gym entrance at the high school. But after going through some programming and talking with principals and staff and counselors, they would really like to still stay as one unit together. And so in order for that to happen, what we are proposing then is to not do the administration addition, but instead renovate the current admin suite and expand it into a couple spaces that are directly off of the media center. So that's what this image is showing. The green area is expanding that administration suite a little bit closer to the media center to provide more square footage so that we can add in those counselors that we heard were wanted and increase some of the offices that we need as the enrollment of this building increases. Knowing we're pushing a little bit closer to the media center, that then suggests that maybe we provide an opportunity for the media center to actually spill out into the corridors. And so you see that blue in the media center spilling out into the corridor space. That large corridor in the high school right now is very underutilized, and there's a lot of square footage there. And so we want to be able to capitalize on that square footage of that corridor to be able to create some of that flex space and that expanded media center space, okay? So this is just a quick starting point of where we are on the administration suite. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, only just to give you a graphic that we've started the conversation. We've talked about the number of guidance offices we think we need, along with other support services. And so this is still kind of a work in progress. One of the things we are wanting to do is expand the clinic and allow that nurses clinic to become larger as our enrollment increases in this building. Expanding that clinic is going to be really important, as well as if this building becomes a middle school and it only increases all that more, we want to be able to give that clinic some additional room. So this is just a quick snapshot of kind of where we are. We kind of have a guidance half and a main administration half to the admin suite. We're just kind of working through the details on it right now. Okay? In terms of the cafeteria, we hear you. We hear you kids that you need more cafeteria space. And I actually really appreciate the idea that was in the high school survey that talked about maybe thinking a little bit outside the box in terms of how we capture that cafeteria space. Is it possible to have a little bit more of an open lunch where kids are granted the privilege to be able to eat somewhere other than the cafeteria? And that's what this graphic is showing. Instead of literally adding another 3,000 square feet to the building just for a cafeteria that gets used during lunch period, we are suggesting now at this point not putting that addition on and rethinking how the high school operates that cafeteria. And so you can see the green square in the bottom right shows that's the amount of additional square footage we're going to need as this building continues to grow. And so where can we find that square footage already in the existing building so that we can save dollars and not literally have to build a cafeteria addition? So we're starting to explore areas that can be used in addition to the cafeteria for lunch. So again, we have a very gracious corridor right there next to the cafeteria that we can start to expand some seating out a little bit into that hallway. We also have some locker bays. You can see we have the opportunity to potentially clear out some of the locker bays and create some kind of overflow cafeteria space to allow those kids to go to. Okay. Next is the athletic addition. And in our conversations that we've had more recently over the athletic addition, the request was, you know what we really would love, the original program asked for replace the weight room in kind in terms of its square footage. So a 4,000 square foot weight room was what was proposed in the program. The request after meeting with the AD and meeting with some of the staff was, you know what, we would really like more square footage to our weight room. We could do more, we could offer more to our kids, we could actually use it as a learning space. If it gets a little bit bigger and actually have classes in it. So the request was, can we eliminate the locker rooms, because they felt that right now those 2 additional locker rooms weren't as useful as expanding the weight room. So the request was to take the square footage that was originally allocated to the locker room and move that to the weight room to be able to increase the size of the weight room. So the current plan has a larger weight room. We still are designing those locker rooms, but the plan is that those locker rooms will be an alternate. So on bid day, when the bids come in, we can see where the dollars are and decide at that point if we can afford to have the locker rooms and the larger weight room or just the larger weight room. We were also thinking long-term when it becomes a middle school, once this is a middle school, those 2 additional locker rooms really aren't needed at that point. This hadn't changed, so this is the existing weight room getting reprogrammed into a band room, so this adds, again, more square footage for the band. And then these are the latest diagrams that show what the academic addition to the high school could look like. I don't want anyone here to get set on this exact floor plan. I like to think of these more as block diagrams to show the program and the spaces that need to go into this addition. So we spent some more time with the staff talking about the use of the enhanced classrooms. So the enhanced classrooms are literally classrooms that are slightly larger than the classrooms that you have, but that larger size is going to allow us to create some of those flex spaces and project spaces that we saw the students ask for in the survey. So when we heard them ask for woodworking, or we heard them ask for a 3D printer, these are the type of enhanced classrooms that are there to help support and provide that type of learning. So in addition to those 6 kind of project classrooms, we also have 2 more traditional classrooms, and then some flex space off of that. Wayne asked in the one meeting, so we have the 2 additional classrooms on the first floor, but not on the second floor. So Wayne asked a very logical question, well, can't we go ahead and build the 2 classrooms on the second floor as well? And my response is no, we can't right now because that isn't in the budget. What was in the budget, what was planned for, is what you see here. But what we do capture above those 2 classrooms is the potential for a roof deck, an outdoor learning space that can be directly adjacent these new project lab spaces. And so we see that roof deck area as a nice, controlled, secured area for kids that are working on projects in those flex spaces. Maybe some of those projects have an outdoor component to them, where they need to be able to go outside and observe it. Maybe it's a science class, maybe it's an art class, maybe it's a sculpture, but having that outdoor roof deck that's nice and protected and secured could be a real benefit for the students. And then the last piece you will notice, high school students who asked for the elevator, this plan does have an elevator in the back of the building, so that will help solve that line item that we saw in the survey as well. These are just a couple images, kind of inspirational images that give you a hint at what we are thinking of when we talk about these enhanced classrooms, flex spaces, so you can start to see. In our high school edition, we have an atrium space flex area that does have a stair that we need no matter what for egress, but we do have the same intent that these images show, where we can expand those stairs out into the flex space and provide the students with an opportunity for large group presentations. That is one of those key skill sets that we're looking for our high school students is communication and giving them the opportunity to be able to present the amazing stuff that they're going to do in some of those enhanced classrooms. Just another picture showing another potential example. Yep. So the junior high edition, from the last meeting that we had, go ahead and click. What we had talked about in the last meeting was, again, trying to save some dollars, trying to think a little bit more creatively about prioritizing our needs. And so in the original program, we had talked about literally building new music spaces. But when we started to really get into the nuts and bolts of it, we found a way to do some cost savings by simply expanding the band room in its currently where it is. So we can expand the band room into its adjacent storage room. We can also pull the casework out of the existing band room and put it into an adjacent new storage room. So that expands the band room and solves that need so that we don't have to build brand new music spaces that tend to be fairly expensive to build. In lieu of building those brand new music spaces, it's a smaller administration addition off the front of the building. So you can start to see here kind of where we are with adding the administration space that we need to the junior high. And you can, after sitting with administrative and with secretaries, we sat down with all the folks that would be working in this office suite. The decision was to keep all of the offices, guidance and administration, together on one side so that you didn't split. Just like the high school wants the guidance and the main admin together, the junior high was the same. So what this scheme is doing is it's renovating the existing admin suite such that all the counselors and all the administrators can have offices together as the building grows. Because remember, we're bringing 6th grade over. So we're going to need those additional counselors to be able to help support the student body. And then what we pulled out of the existing admin suite and put on the other side were the needed conference room space and the staff workroom that currently exists in the admin suite. That goes on the other side. So we spent a lot of time talking about security, talking about how visitors enter the building, talking about how students access the administrators, and all that went into developing that layout. So here's a quick overall of where the additions are going on the building. Yellow are additions, green are renovation. Go ahead. That gray image is what was originally planned in the master plan for the addition of the junior high. As you can see, we're trying to pull it in a little bit so that we don't have the additional cost of having to change the driveway that already exists around the building, which will help with grading, help with stormwater, things like that. Okay? This is a little bit more detailed of what that back academic addition could look like. Again, this is fairly block diagram, so don't get too set on the floor plan, but it does show all the different spaces that will be going into the junior high, which includes regular traditional core classrooms as well as some of those enhanced classrooms that we have in the high school. We have basically a mini version of that in the junior high so that we can start to prepare those kids in the middle school for what they're going to be able to do in the high school. Again, just some images that are of different projects that show kind of what we're talking about. Okay, in the intermediate school, not much has changed from the program standpoint from the last time I presented. We did spend quite a bit of time with the staff talking about whether this addition should be 1-story or whether it should be 2-story. So this first rendering, which is the rendering that was part of the part of the bond levy campaign, shows what a 2-story addition might look like. Next. This is what a one-story might look like. And when we got into this conversation with the principals and with the staff that would be in this building, they really voiced their preference for the one-story. And the reason is that we're talking about adding a classroom pod of 8 classrooms. And so if it's a 2-story, it means you just have 1 floor of 4 classrooms and 1 floor of 4 classrooms. And they felt like to really get the collaboration that they wanted and the outside flex space for those classrooms, that ideally those would all be together on 1 floor. And so that's what this image shows. Go ahead and click one more. So basically what we're doing at the intermediate is taking the area that you see in green, which is essentially 1/4 of the overall academic wing. Go ahead and click. We're taking that, and that's what our addition is, okay? Go ahead and click one more. The other piece of the intermediate school is expanding the gym. And what we have talked about is just like the locker rooms at the high school being an alternate, the gym addition on the intermediate could also be an alternate. Because the reality is that extra gym square footage isn't needed as much in this first phase because we're not adding any grade levels to this building. We're simply increasing enrollment slightly. When that gym addition becomes important is in the next phases when we actually continue to add on to this building. Okay? So graphically, to take a look at what phase 2 could look like. Phase 2 of this building, when we build it out, would be bringing a 2-story addition on. That would allow us to move the kids from the first floor that we're building in phase 1 into the 2-story. When we move those kids out into the other addition, that allows us to then, go ahead and click, add the second floor. Okay? So that helps solve some of the concerns that we're hearing about literally building a second floor while the kids are in session on the first floor. So the idea is that we design this addition, 1-story addition, to be able to receive that second floor in the next phase. Okay?
And that will hold a second floor. That's going to be built so that it can hold a second floor.
Yes, you literally build the second floor slab. So instead of having a traditional roof structure, you literally build the second floor slab and then you put your roof on top of that. So it's done all the time in any buildings that anticipate having that next floor added on. So Butler Tech is a perfect example right now that is adding, I believe, a 3rd floor to their biomedical science building. Same thing.
So the first building that you would build would be an 8-class pod on 1 floor.
Yes.
Then to take the kids out of the 8-classroom pod, you would build a 2-story, 8 on each floor, 4 on each floor?
Yes, each pod is 8 classrooms. So at the end,
So-
we need 4 pods of 8.
Okay, so then I take them out of that 8, I move them in, and I still have half that building allegedly not being used. Then I add the other.
You would probably be bringing, you would at that point be bringing the next phase of this building anticipates a whole different grade configuration. So as soon as that 2-story addition is built, I would argue that you would be wanting to move kids in it and out of Salem. Okay? So this is just a quick snapshot of what goes in that pod. 8 classrooms, a flex area, restrooms for that pod, small group rooms for that pod, teacher collaboration room, all of the similar things, quite frankly, that it has on the other side of the building. And that's just an example project. That is not the floor plan, but it is an example project that our team has done of a similar feel. Again, example pictures of what those pods could look like. Okay, last project, the brand new PK through 1 elementary that is built behind Salem. Nothing really has changed from our last meeting, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. Go ahead. Just a quick snapshot again of what the elementary consists of. The elementary consists of 6 pods of 6 classrooms each, so a total of 36 classrooms. And again, each of those pods has flex areas outside of the classrooms that can serve as breakout space, that can serve as library space. That is one thing in our meetings with the staff and teachers that they really loved, was taking that square footage that is dedicated to a central media center off on its own, taking most of that square footage and adding it to the flex space in each classroom pod so that the kids have immediate access to those media center type services, instead of having to go down and move to another location in the building to get to that media center. And then the other similar amenities that you see in a classroom pod with small group rooms, special ed resource rooms, teacher collaboration rooms, restrooms right there with the pods, especially in an early elementary when you have PK and K kiddos. The adjacency of those restrooms becomes critical. Just again, some example images that our team has done. This is actually a kindergarten pod of 7 classrooms that our team has done. So it would be something similar to that. Just another example, this happens to be middle school, which our team went and visited. Okay. So in the end, when we were done programming the early elementary in the master plan, we had allocated 102,000 square feet. And right now, after going through all of our programming meetings with the staff, we are almost dead on 102. We're slightly under, which is great. That's what I keep encouraging everybody to be at this point. But I feel real good about where each of the projects is currently sitting. So that's it. Thank you. Yep. Thank you very much.
And we have a Thursday night community presentation of much of the same material for anybody who would like to come get updated or an update on where we are. It's going to be in the high school auditorium at 7 o'clock. We have also some staff update sessions, one scheduled for 3 o'clock on Thursday afternoon, and then we have a later session at, I think, 4:15 for the second part of the staff, any staff that are interested. Please put that out. That's all I have.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Power. Thank you very much, Chris. Appreciate it. Okay, at this time, community comments on agenda items.
No one has signed up.
I hear it, I don't see it. Okay, so back there, okay. Well, I know I'm going to be looking for it later, that's why I wanted to. Okay, at this time, we will entertain treasurer's reports.
Yes, ask under item 1 of the treasurer section, the approval of the December monthly financial reports and bank reconciliation.
I'll move.
Ms. Grice?
Second.
Mr. Kameen?
One thing I wanted to point out, as you'll notice very clearly on the bank reconciliation, look at it increased by a substantial amount of money, and that's because of the bond proceeds that came in. You'll see an account there with roughly $63 million in it, and that is made up by the $59 million in bonds plus the premium that was produced when the bonds were sold.
Okay. Very nice. Okay. There are no questions. Roll call, please.
Mr. Cremines?
Yes.
Ms. Grice?
Yes.
Mr. Siebert?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Mr. Nay?
Yes.
Following into next, I ask for the board's approval to amend the estimated resources and appropriations for the current year fiscal 19.
Move.
Mr. Cremines?
Second.
Mr. Siebert?
And once again, what we're doing here is we're amending those resources as we receive those funds and also the appropriations to spend them for the current fiscal year.
There are no questions. Roll call, please.
Mr. Siebert?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Mr. Nay?
Yes.
Mr. Cremines?
Yes.
Ms. Grice?
Yes.
Item 3 asks for the board's approval of contracts as listed, actually with Duke Energy, which is actually a revenue producing contract.
Mr. Nay?
I'll second.
Ms. Grice?
This is a power share program that we participate in each year, and it's actually worked out very well for us.
Right, there are no questions. Roll call, please.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Mr. Nay?
Yes.
Mr. Cremines?
Yes.
Ms. Grice?
Yes.
Mr. Siebert?
Yes.
Thank you. Next, under item 4, ask for the board's approval to purchase 4 2019 International 77-passenger buses.
I'll move.
Okay. Ms. Grice moved, and Mr. Janae second. Thank you, Mr. Kaminski.
Okay.
All right, there are no questions?
Greatly needed,
Greatly
needed, especially as we spring the start.
If I understand, this is part of the program to try to replace a lot of our aging buses that we put
Correct.
a lot of dollars in to keep them on the road.
Yes, sir.
All right. And rotate the old ones out, and get the new ones in, so, okay, more needs to be safe, that's correct. All right, if there are no questions, roll call, please.
Mr. Siebert,
Yes.
Mr. Haas,
Yes.
Mr. Nay,
Yes.
Mr. Cremins,
Yes.
Ms. Grice.
Yes.
Next, I ask for the board's approval of donation of 2 activity pallets for the preschool playground being donated by Christopher and Jennifer Gaines.
I'll move.
Ms. Janae?
Second.
Mr. Cremins? No questions, roll call, please.
Mr. Cremins,
Yes.
Ms. Grice,
Yes.
Mr. Siebert,
Yes.
Mr. Haas,
Yes.
Mr. Nay.
Yes.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Very, very
Always
nice.
glad to get donations.
Absolutely, appreciate it. All right.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Gund. At this time, we will entertain the superintendent's reports and recommendations. Mr. Power?
Thank you. Ask the board's approval for all items listed under number 1, personnel.
I'll move.
Ms. Grice?
Second.
Mr. Siebert?
That's all right.
Okay, there are no questions. Roll call, please.
Mr. Nay,
Yes.
Mr. Cremins,
Yes.
Ms. Grice,
Yes.
Mr. Siebert,
Yes.
Mr. Haas.
Yes.
I'd ask the board's approval for item number 2, a release of separation agreement as presented.
I'll move.
Mr. Janae? Ms. Grice? Roll call, please.
So Ms. Grice,
Yes.
Mr. Siebert,
Yes.
Mr. Haas,
Yes.
Mr. Nay,
Yes.
Mr. Cremins.
Yes.
Thank you. I'd ask the board's approval under number 3, the new job description for assistant athletic director and gifted intervention specialist.
I'll move.
Mr. Cremins?
Second.
Mr. Siebert? There are no questions. Roll call, please.
Mr. Siebert,
Yes.
Mr. Haas,
Yes.
Mr. Nay,
Yes.
Mr. Cremins,
Yes.
Ms. Grice.
Yes.
Thank you. Ask the board's approval for item number 4, the fiscal year 20 staffing plan as presented.
I'll move.
Ms. Grice?
Second.
Mr. Nay? Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Siebert,
Yes.
Mr. Haas,
Yes.
Mr. Nay,
Yes.
Mr. Cremins,
Yes.
Ms. Grice.
Yes.
Thank you. Ask the board's approval for item number 5, the American Association of Teachers, a French Award.
I'll move.
Okay, Mr. Cremins, and seconded by Ms. Janae.
This is a recognition of our high school principal, Kathy Trevathan, she was nominated by our French teacher, Ken Deso, at the high school. And it basically, because of the recognition of Kathy, and one of our French students is going to go to a 2-week camp, all expenses paid, no cost of the board.
Very nice.
That is a good award.
All right, if there are no other questions, roll call, please.
Mr. Haas,
Yes.
Mr. Nay,
Yes.
Mr. Cremins,
Yes.
Ms. Grice,
Yes.
Mr. Siebert.
Yes.
And ask the board's approval for item number 6, 2019 competition cheer team, the UCA Nationals trip. It's a field trip, no cost to the board. Our young ladies have qualified for nationals. It's in Florida. No cost to the board.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Great.
Okay, Mr. Cremins, and who was second? Who seconded? Mr. Siebert? Okay. Yes, Mr. Siebert. Okay, if there are no questions, roll call, please.
Mr. Nay,
Yes.
Mr. Cremins,
Yes.
Ms. Grice,
Yes.
Mr. Siebert,
Yes.
Mr. Haas.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, that's all I have.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Power.
Good job.
This time, under new business, we have the first reading of our updated board policies. I'm sure you all will jump at the chance to take that.
Exciting reading.
IKF really is something that has recently come to our attention. There's an interest in PE credit for students who are in learning area.
Okay, that's our board policy, so at this time, we'll entertain our Warren County Career Center report.
And I do have a report. I'm
Given
excited.
to us by Ms. Grice.
We had our organizational meeting and we re-elected the president and vice president as they were. Also, Mr. Kermeens, thank you, his little pointed head, jumped in to volunteer as the OSBA legislative liaison. And I got volunteered to be the student achievement liaison. In recognition of the School Board Appreciation Month, board members were given certificates of appreciation and gift bags. Culinary students baked cookies for the board. Our director of curriculum, Joel King, presented an update on our testing. He reported that all students tested for the end of course exams. He credited our assistant director, Ken McCone, for the success of the testing schedule. Every one of our students that needed to be tested were tested, so that's a plus. Our treasurer, Kathy McMonagle, reported the district earned an excellent in fiscal reporting from the and the board approved meeting dates. We also accepted donations, and our fire science receives thousands and thousands of dollars for and equipment from all the different fire departments around. So it's really nice. Also, we received $4,118 from USU Wright Flyer of Ohio to use for scholarships for anyone that's going into aviation. And also 3 $250 awards towards the purchase of tool bags for electricity students. So it's really, we are really getting some good donations for the Career Center. Rick Smith, our superintendent, gave updates on the applications received for the 2019-20, and our enrollment is currently going up.
Very good. All right, thank you very much, Ms. Grice, appreciate that. Okay. All right, at this time, our next board meeting is Tuesday, February 26th, here, and we call this the Panther Room?
Yes, sir.
The Panther Room, so looking forward to having that next month. And,
It seems weird how everybody just closed.
yes.
You can hear it, right? And also, I know Randy said this before, but a lot of times there's not a lot of discussion on the things that we pass. We get this ahead of time and we do go over it, and if we have questions, we either call Mr. Power or whoever, or Mr. Gonda. So it's not, we're just sitting here going, yes, 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 we have discussed all these.
And I would just like to say thank you for the updates from the buildings. I know you guys probably read these and think that we don't read them, but I do. I read them and I love seeing the stuff that's going on here. We can't always be there.
And thank Rachel for the goodies out there. That was nice. She's back there?
Yeah, back there.
Thank you so much. They were delicious.
All right. Thank you all very much. At this time, any community comments on non-agenda items?
No one has signed up.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, at this time, we have a motion to move into executive session to consider the employment of public employer official, that action is taken. I'm sorry, Mr. Kamin? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Mr. Net?
Yes.
Mr. Kamin's? Yes. Ms. Grice? Yes. Mr. Seaver?
Yes.